Room 318, my classroom, my first day teaching 7th grade English at a charter school in Harlem. Everything is perfect, right? The desks are perfect, the books in the library are perfect, my students sitting out in front of me, they're perfect. And despite the horror stories that my more seasoned colleagues have shared with me about these kids, all I can see is our perfect year ahead together. Kid raises his hand in the back, can't really he's not making eye contact with me, and I call on him, I say, Zion, what's your question? He says, are you gonna leave us in December like the rest of our teachers? Leave? I just got here. What is he talking about? Oh, their teachers have left them. They may have known each other since they were 4 or 5 years old, and here I am standing up in front of them, 22-year-old white woman from New Jersey, asking them to trust me. And all they see is an open door and me on the way out. In that moment, it was easy for me to say, Zion, I'm not going anywhere, I promise. And I meant it. But it wasn't until a couple months later that I realized why teachers do leave in December. I have my bag with my papers on one arm, another bag with another set of papers on another arm, my backpack, my computer, and my lunch, and my sneakers, every day back and forth. And I get bursitis in my hip, and I go to the emergency room twice my first year teaching because I can't walk. I'm in so much pain. I teach 4 hours straight with no break, no other adult in the room, and my prep times are spent in meetings with my colleagues and administrators, and I don't eat lunch until 3:30 after I've dismissed my students. I'm standing in my classroom, holding back 2 young gentlemen larger than me. One of them swings a punch around my head. Luckily he missed. And I look around and I see that the rest of the class is cheering them on, and I'm the only adult in the room. And I'm an adult. And I spend my heart and soul on these kids. And that first test they just took, more than half of them fail. Most nights, I'm sitting in my bedroom. Well, it's my studio apartment, so it's everything. And I have papers strewn around me, my computer, and I'm crying. And had I not made that promise to Zion in September, I might have been out the door in December too. Going into my second year teaching, I knew I couldn't have it go that way the first year went. I could give more to these kids. I wanted it. I just didn't know how to give it to them. So I was sharing this with people in my life, and many of them said, go get a coach. Get a coach. Have you heard about coaching? What coaching can provide? I was like, what? What is this? But I listened to them, and I got a coach. So my coach had never stepped foot in a classroom. She wasn't a teacher. She wasn't trained in what was capable for a teacher to do or not do. But the impact she made on my teaching that second year, unforgettable and profound. So to demonstrate what a coach can provide, we're going to do an exercise. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay, you guys ready? Okay. Okay, put your hand in the air as high as it will go. Okay. Okay. Put your hand up even higher. Okay, great. All right, good. Okay, good. Hands down, sit down. Great. Okay, so had you not follow my first instruction to put your hand in the air as high as it would go? Right? The second time I asked you to put it even higher, you stood up, you got resourceful. A coach helps you see past your limitations and coaches you through that to what's possible for your performance. Now, by the way, you could have stood up on your chair and you would have been even higher in the air with your arm. A coach makes you resourceful, has you see what's already around you that will help you improve what you care most about. So I go to my coach and I say, I don't know what to do. My students are reading at a grade level. Some of them are reading at second grade level. Some of them are reading at 10th grade reading level, and they're in 7th grade. There's such a gap, I don't think I can close it. She says to me, well, is it possible? Is it possible that they could all read on grade level by the end of the year? Oh, damn, yeah. It's possible, and we're gonna do it, aren't we? And she says, yeah, you are. So I get in action. I know I need to have these kids fall in love with reading in a new way. And I launch a crowdfunding campaign to bring a new library into my classroom. And the kids help me pick the books. They're looking at the covers, they're reading the blurbs, and they're getting excited about what's coming our way. And in the process of this crowdfunding campaign, I am approached by Extra TV. And they want to host me as a feature teacher and give me a teacher makeover and come to my classroom and meet my kids. Okay, awesome. So I partner with Extra. They come into my classroom, and on air, they tell us that they're gifting us this library for our class, and they're going to fund the whole crowdfunding project. And so we get these books in the room, and the kids, they're unwrapping. It's like they're in a candy store, really. And I get my colleagues on board, and by the end of that school year, every single student in my class is reading on grade level, ready for 8th grade. Thank you. And I'm not done now. Now I see. Now I'm like, what else is possible? So I tell my coach, I want these kids to travel. Some of them have never been off the island of Manhattan. But there's no funds for a field trip at my school. So she says, what are you going to do about that? And we create a plan. And I've seen that the crowdfunding thing works. So I launch another crowdfunding campaign to bring a field trip to Washington, D.C. overnight for my 8th grade students. And I start receiving donations to this campaign, like a senator contributes. I don't know who the senator is. They just wrote that they're a senator. And like people who I don't even know are providing like contributions to this field trip that I'm planning with my colleagues for my students. And I get another call from Staples. They've noticed this crowdfunding campaign now, and they call me and they say, listen, they call me and they say, we're partnering with Katy Perry, and we want you to go speak to her about education and share with her what you're doing, and you can bring a couple students with you. Oh, and by the way, you're gonna be in People magazine talking about this. Okay. Oh, and by the way, we're going to fund the last $8,000 of your crowdfunding campaign and send your students to Washington, D.C. Now, that raised a total of $16,000 for these 8th graders to go to Washington, D.C., and that field trip has now become a fabric of what it is to be an 8th grader at this school. And it has lived on past me, right? And these kids now get to go to Washington, D.C. every year. And in that year, in addition to all the breakthroughs I caused in my teaching, which was my primary goal, I actually had the chance to balance my life for myself. I lost 20 pounds. I ran in a Tough Mudder. If anybody knows what a Tough Mudder is, it's a 12-mile trek through mud with Army-inspired obstacle courses. I met the man of my dreams and entered into a relationship and just got the chance to be the daughter and the friend and the teacher that I most wanted to be. Now, what's missing in schools is coaching for teachers, teacher coaching, like sports coaching, right? I thought, well, if my coach made such a difference for me and she wasn't even a teacher, imagine if someone had the technical background a teacher or a school leader would have and the coaching know-how. Kindergarten teachers, 8th grade teachers, Latin teachers, science teachers, I've coached them. As a master instructional coach, I have trained dozens of coaches and school leaders, dozens of teachers in one-on-one coaching relationships, I've designed over 100 professional development programs and led to hundreds of teachers. And my students in the classes of the teachers that I worked with outperform students in Chappaqua, which is the highest performing school district in New York State, on New York State tests year over year. 35% of the teachers that I coached went on to receive promotions in the next year in education. And 93% of the teachers I've coached still work in education today. They've stayed in the profession. Many major studies show, and my personal experience show, that teacher coaching programs cut attrition rates in half. So how does this work? Well, I'm sitting with a first-year teacher, Ms. E, and I coach her. And it's December, and she's struggling. And we do a few things, right? Her students have just underperformed on a major first grade benchmark. And so now it's like, okay, the flags are up. We have to really do the work to have these kids get where they need to be. And I do a couple things with her. I go into her classroom and I watch her teach. And I look at what habits she's forming, at what tools she's using, at what patterns I notice in her instruction. Where is she being rigorous? Where is she being engaging? Where are there like lulls, right? So I do that. I also have conversations with her about her teaching and her practice. So one day we sit down together, and I get that there's a I could have a technical conversation with her about her craft, but that's not what's going to make a difference today. And I say to her, what's happening for you when you're up there in front of the kids? Like, what's really going on in your mind when you're teaching? And she says, man, I just keep thinking that I'm just bombing it. Like, I'm thinking about how I planned this lesson, how I prepared it, how I thought about teaching it, all the ways in which I memorized the lines I was going to say and the questions I was going to ask, and like how none of that's happening now. And if one more kid asks me for a tissue while I'm in the middle of a sentence, and so we go to work on her mindset and her confidence. And that was what made the difference for this teacher. She sees that she feels a need to be connected to her students in a more meaningful way. She wants to have relationships with her colleagues, and she wants to have a sense of self in her teaching practice. So she creates the dream board for her students and has 3 of her male students who are having a hard time transitioning from kindergarten to first grade up in her classroom, and they create collages of the things that they want to be when they grow up. And they really start designing their future at 7 years old with her in her little classroom, which was actually literally a small room. Not that classrooms are little. And she thrived. She got to breathe. She got some space. And that same year, her students in March outperformed their peers double in their read aloud assessments, and she became like the new resident expert in read aloud on her team. And this year, as a teacher, she was asked to lead the read aloud for her team of teachers at her school, and doing all of this while being a full-time grad student and leading the youth leadership program at her synagogue. This matters. Coaching for teachers matters. Every summer, the United States hires 200,000 new teachers, and before the next summer, 22,000 are out the door. And even if you make it past the first year, the odds are not great. By the end of the 3rd year, new teachers, 1/3 of them have fled the profession. And after 5 years, 50% are no longer in education. And what's more, 2 out of 5 teachers in our country is over the age of 50 and considering retiring. Now, everybody pays when teachers leave, not only students, but districts. It costs districts $11,000 for every teacher that leaves the classroom, not including the school-specific knowledge, curriculum development, and professional development invested in that teacher. On average, it's about $5.8 billion annually spent on teacher attrition. Who suffers most? Kids, and specifically our lowest income students. Our students in schools with high minority populations, high immigrant populations, those schools where teaching spots are harder to fill are the ones that are suffering the most. Our students in those schools are 5 times more likely than their peers to receive an underprepared teacher in the fall. Now, most new teachers, no matter how naive or idealistic they might be, like we expect something when we go into the classroom, right? We expect that the class sizes are gonna be big. We expect the salary to be what the salary is. We expect that we're probably not gonna get a lot of supplies. What we don't realize is that we may not get the kind of support we think from parents, school administrators, and even our colleagues, our fellow teachers. And so we're alone when the door closes and the textbooks open. Teacher coaching has the capacity to make a profound difference for teachers. What would be possible if the 50 million students in our US school system had a teacher who was provided the coaching that would make the difference? Well, Ms. Smith in the Bronx might finally run that marathon she's been putting off her whole life, or the last 10 years since she's been teaching kindergarten to 30 students each year, and she never thought she'd have the time and energy to do that for herself. Mr. Thomas in the Los Angeles United School District across the country might finally start that male mentoring program for his high school sophomores that he's just been dying to create because he feels like he can't get through to them. And Ms. Baldwin, she may actually stay in the profession past her 2-year commitment with her graduate school program because she finds the life of an educator to be fulfilling, balanced, and provide her with peace in her life. Teacher coaching is the next access to transform the educational landscape in our country. And on behalf of Nelson Coaching, I'm committed that 1,000 new teachers get coached in the next 2 years, and that our teachers have access to the kind of Olympic caliber coaching that they deserve, and that our students never have to even think to ask a question like, are you going to leave me in December? And when that happens, our schools win, our teachers win, our students win, and our future gets to win. Thank you.